Hi, students. How are you doing? Welcome to Naya Sim. And thank you all so much for all love and support. Hope you all are doing great. So I came across this video and she was actually talking about black wealth, pop-colored anger, right? How they are usually very, very uncomfortable seeing a black person who has upper class, and they usually feel very uncomfortable and start asking questions. How did you get your wealth? How did you manage to be this comfortable? What do you do? And they get completely very uncomfortable when they see that you are like in that upper class. And I shared experience of when they see a black person, especially boarding a first class or business class or something like that, they usually act some kind of way because I have seen people, a black person probably in first class and all that, and probably approaching the counter, and they were telling them like, this way to regular customers and all that, not knowing that the person bought first class. So to them, they already stereotype you like you are not supposed to be in first class, or you cannot afford first class ticket because people like you are not supposed to be there. Or how did you get the money? What did you do to get the money and the rest of it? And a lot of people I also share experiences of how black people were being treated in some certain spaces because they think they do not have a lot, or they cannot they do not have a lot, or they cannot afford a lot, not knowing that they are the big bags. Let's get into.
Being Black and upper class has in no way been a persecution for me. It has, however, been a front row seat to a kind of white rage that affects everyone, no matter what social, racial category you slot into in society. This rage flies under the radar, it's made invisible, it's been around for a long time, it runs on the same economic, political playbook that it has since the end of the Civil War, and it's hurting all of you. All of you. Unless you're Jeff Bezos, but that's not you. A very small example of this is a couple of years back, I was all dressed up with black and white cousins. We're all dressed up. There's a good group of us, maybe 12, and we're going to the symphony. This symphony is it's manned by tons of volunteers, right? People who want to help you, people who are excited to see young people come to the symphony. And we get there and I've got my 8 or 9 tickets all connected. And this older white woman, member of my community, is doing the scanning. I can tell from the get-go, she doesn't really want to help me. She's peeved. And I'm thinking, why? I've got this huge group of people coming in. Like, this is a win for the local community symphony. So she scans all my tickets, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. She gets to the 8th or 9th one. I don't remember how many exactly we had. It doesn't beep. Now, mind you, I had to pick up these tickets at will call with an ID, with my name. And she knows this because she's a volunteer before I come to her. She scans the last ticket that has the symphony's name on it. It's got all the official stuff. And she explodes with this quiet anger and this total frustration. Like, she's just like, she knew it. She knew I was a thief. And she loudly, in front of everybody, accuses me basically of stealing a ticket and attaching it to the legitimate tickets, which is how you should do crime. Now, that's a ridiculous thing. We sorted it out. We found out that yes, while she was following the rules as to what to do if, I guess, a thief comes and attaches a fake ticket to a bunch of real tickets, she did not know how to use her scanner properly. But instead of having customer service, instead of thinking about how one should approach this, she responded with the anger that was already inside of her. She'd already assumed and knew that this kind of place was not for people like us. And she didn't want to have to let us in. And if she could get us out on a technicality, on a quiet rule, and she threw up her hands, I can't help you, I can't do anything, she would. That is a very tiny, low stakes example of the work Carol Anderson, as a historian, has done in looking at the documented and demonstrated examples of rulemaking and code making that certain people in higher classes have used to quietly make sure that lower class whites and Black people with wealth cannot get ahead. When Carol Anderson decided to write White Rage, it had come after she'd been asked for the Washington Post to write an op-ed in the wake of August 2014 when the Black Lives Matter riots were exploding. Her critique was that we were looking at Black rage. We were looking at physical anger, destruction of property, all those different things. And she was making it very clear in that first essay and then in her book that you can't understand this rage unless you understand the other kind of rage. That's the rage that uses your political power, your legal power, to write laws and little caveats into things to make sure that you undermine the wealth of people believed to be Black, and you make sure that people who are believed to be white, who are in lower classes, never politically come together with those people. Now, who does that cost? It costs the democracy, and it costs all sorts of other classes that aren't in the ruling class. Because what they're doing is you're undermining, as she shows in her book, you're undermining voting rights. You're undermining this ability for the lower classes to look at each other and go, hey, our taxes should be going toward X, Y, and Z. Carol's research, I should say Miss Anderson's research, is an invitation to look at the kind of responses that have legally always existed to the advancement of Black people or the advancement of lower classes coming together and saying, this is how we would like to be treated. She's making it clear that if we don't look at the playbook, we're going to miss it in today's age. It's not something that happened back then. It's something that's happening now. We're going to be looking at this work because there's going to come a point in time when you are trying to rightfully access something that is yours, and you're going to be told that if it is given to you or if you want it, it's probably because you stole it or you shouldn't have it. As a historian, she's making these brilliant connections about how this is an assault on Black middle class, but then you can go out and see it's also the middle class as a whole. It's really important that we contextually understand our history because we're all bound up together, and all of our lives and our pursuit of happiness and liberty, it's connected. And there are reasons that people don't want you to understand that because you become dangerous when you know that. You're less of a victim and you're more of a threat. So I'm excited to read this book. If you've read this book, if you finished it, if you know of any other things of Carol Anderson's that you just really particularly want to look at, please write in the comments. I was wondering how we could break down the sapphire caricature that's still being used to control Black girls, and you guys handed it right to me. Disappointed some of you yet again because I am supposed to perform 24/7 Black gratitude and limit my thoughts on media and culture to light, easy breezy takes. I am supposed to be miserable looking at things I love, movies, history, and media, and looking at the context that gives those things meaning. And I'm not supposed to be using my time to look at how those stories and histories affect your everyday life, because I'm supposed to spend all my time thanking God that I was born on 5th base. Instead of commiserating with other victims, I should be shopping more than I already shop, and playing more than I already play, and relaxing more than I already relax. Everyone's so concerned with me and my misery. I promise you I'm good. On a serious note, to everyone who is concerned that I am self-victimizing myself, I want to apologize to you on behalf of all the people who taught you to first minimize your own feelings and your own experiences and your own pain. That's not easy. I have famously never been a chill person. As a kid, when I found out about the system for storing chickens in pens, I cried. And then when I found out about human trafficking, I was destroyed. I have always been obsessed with patterns and stories and why we do what we do. It's no surprise to anyone who knows me that I became a student of government and history and politics because not only am I interested in what we do, but I'm interested in why we justify it, how we justify it. My idea of a wild weekend is to go to the same museum 3 times in a row. Last weekend, I went to a museum and I got very jealous and wanted to rip the button off of her. But there's a lady called the Explainer, and her job is literally to yap and talk about everything in the museum to people who come and visit. My life crumbles overnight. You can rest assured you will find me leading a team of explainers at the museum. That's what I get to do here, and I love it. And I love talking about these American stories with you guys. Why does that trigger people, and is that new? Nope, it's not. And today we're going to introduce that little mechanism that's used to shut Black women up. Because if they can't own your body, they sure as heck try to own your mind. For my white women and my non-Black women and everyone else, this still applies to you because the mechanism for divorcing you from your lived experiences, that sense of weirdness when you feel something or an unpleasant interaction, that divorce is used to protect prejudice and bias. Being able to gaslight and silence you into never critiquing anything is how they keep you from finding solidarity with other people. So the sapphire caricature came out of the 1800s, and it originated with the sassy mammy type. So what this is it portrays Black women as angry, bitter nags, emasculating forces, constant complainers, very hypersensitive. Let's remember what Black women were historically supposed to be: servile, non-threatening, passive, and unseen. In the 1800s, the normalcy of putting Black women in those boxes through enslavement was being politically and economically challenged by the culture at large. Women were being seen, wider culture for the first time, as people who might have opinions about what is happening to them. They might not be passive, they might actually be active agents of change. So remember, this was a huge part of Harriet Tubman's success. Her disguise was not necessarily her clothes, it was her Blackness, because people saw this short Black woman walking around acting like a servant, and they didn't assume she was a danger to white supremacy. They didn't assume she was this great liberator and this spy for the Union. She used that story of her being the serving, docile, quiet woman with no opinions to her advantage, and that's how she liberated so many people and brought the Union to victory. Do you know how many other Black women, white famous movie stars, white women, used this idea of female passivity to their advantage to get things done, and not only the Civil War, but other wars? A great essay. It's free online. It's by Lily Loughborough, and it's called The Male Glance. And it's how, when we look at female works, we tend to not assume intentionality or genius. I think that in a glance, we know the totality of the woman's mind and her work and her genius in this, and it's not much. And if it is genius, if there is complications in it, it's because it was an accident. If you want to say I'm making that up, or that's me self-victimizing again, I would encourage you to take one semester of American history or read one book, and you will see this is not the story I would make up. It's very depressing. Back to the sapphire thing. By creating the sassy inherentness of Black women, people, the ruling class, could shunt responsibility of the burden of white supremacy and sexism onto the person they were oppressing and not themselves. Black women aren't complaining because we treat them like dogs and they have no agency and there's nothing but violence in the society for them. No, they're complaining because they're inherently, naturally bitter hags. They love being victims, so it's natural for them to be upset over every little thing. What can you expect? They're Black women. Worse, nothing's ever good enough for women like that. Why do you think they're emasculating men? It's not because they're challenging patriarchal structures. They just hate men. The sneaky thing about creating this caricature is that the ruling class could create this illusion that looked like that they were in a society, that they had created a society where Black women could blow off steam safely. Truth was, politically and economically, they still had this massive social power and grip to violently keep Black women silent and make sure that they couldn't complain about what was being done to them. During this time, there was a ramp up of terrorism on Black people by white supremacists, lynching, all sorts of things. It was extrajudicial violence that said, don't complain, don't look the wrong way, and don't you dare blink, because if you do, we will unalive you. As the federal system was freeing Black people, the control and violence that you needed to uphold the power structure of old, it had to be privatized. If you have this idea of sassy Black women, you can pretend to be way more generous than you actually are. In reality, if you challenged the social system as a Black woman, you were punished violently. Jim Crow Museum said it best, and I'm going to read it to you now. The sapphire's desire to dominate and her hypersensitivity to injustices makes her a perpetual complainer. But she does not criticize to improve things. Rather, she criticizes because she is unendingly bitter and wishes that unhappiness on others. The sapphire caricature is a harsh portrayal of African American women, but it is more than that. It is a social control mechanism that is employed to punish Black women who violate the societal norms that encourage them to be passive, servile, non-threatening, and unseen. How convenient is that? You, rich Black girl, who have an issue with a racist server, you're not a patron paying good money who just wants to be respected. You're hypersensitive. When you're a researcher in film and media and you critique a film's sexist message, you're not a professional with a critical thinking mind. You're just a nag. You are upset with a backhanded compliment from a colleague. You're not somebody who has inherent self-respect and want to be treated as such. You're somebody who needs to grow up and just handle things. Undermining of your critical thought is how the social power that you recently just got in history gets chipped away at. I was going to call you a sapphire to your face, but this is an idea that hasn't gone anywhere because the majority of Americans have not unpacked the assumptions, racist beliefs, and the things that they've inherited from generations of people. Sapphire accusations are super useful now because it helps handle this social transformation of Black women from long-suffering victims fated to just bear pain to human beings who can assert their own personhood and agency. A way of both accusing us of not taking what we can get, but also being upset with us for not bearing things well. We are no longer good victims. We're supposed to complain about anything because we have it so good. I will be the first to admit I have it really, really good, embarrassingly good. Don't miss the part where I am thrilled and I get to choose with my own free time that I want to make media about American history and politics. Maybe you're not used to seeing it, but this is what ease and happiness looks like on a Black girl. Joke is on me for thinking I could fit all this into one video. The tricky thing, though, I will say about sassiness is that if it's earmarked as unnecessary and hypercritical and hypersensitive, what that does is it makes existing power structures that are oppressive not seem as oppressive as they actually are. Because we're not reacting to something real. We're overreacting to something small. Sassiness can be cute. It can be feisty and adorable and something acceptable, and therefore still in control of the ruling class, still something that amuses those who are on top. In short, there's nothing in short about me. To end this, if we're sassy and we're adorable and just little complainers and princesses, we still have it really good. And there's nothing to actually tear down or attack. Do you think the sassy mammy caricature ended like in the 1800s where it began? I am not so happy to inform you that if your grandparents were born any time between the 30s and the 40s, they got a good dose of that. And that was probably one of the first understandings of what Black women were. And if they are not like massive anti-racist activists, they probably haven't rooted that out of themselves. And so it's still zooming around in this community. You're going to have to finish this tomorrow, but I would like to know where people tell you that you have been self-victimized and if you're being just sassy and angry. That said, I'm really grateful for all of you. You guys are wonderful, and it is so much fun discussing these things with you. See you later.
So this is all I got from the video, and sincerely speaking, this is really like Black people's experience and all that. Number one is that they cannot stand a Black person that is doing amazingly well for him or herself. I mean, it's usually a problem because how did you get all the things you are using? How were you able to maneuver it? Like, you're supposed to be limited to some certain things. You're not supposed to have access to everything. I mean, you're not supposed to be wealthy and the rest of it. This is usually like, the expression that comes from them. Now, I remember that I have actually been with Black people that kind of are probably traveling and maybe bought first class ticket and then trying to access the lounge and all that. And probably the people at the counter, first of all, they will give you this face that tells you, are you sure you are at the right place, right? And then what she said no or yes, or like look at you like you are not supposed to be here, or probably having a partner that tells you like probably you got to your seat and then she or she might be like, are you sure you are at the right seat? So it's not like you are at the wrong place, but are you sure? How did you manage to afford it? Like, you're a Black person and you are not supposed to afford something like, they actually do not believe that Black people are supposed to afford luxury or have a good life, have something great, live in a great neighborhood and all that. So they actually get triggered anytime they see a Black person doing amazingly well for him or herself, right? And then kind of become insecure, especially Black women is always something like, when they see that you are doing great, you are like, you've passed some certain levels and all that, they become really angry, like, why would you be that? How did you survive? How did he get there? Because I remember that I have said this several times here that to them, what they always think of us is the fact that we cannot do some certain job because in their own words, we are not supposed to do some certain jobs like be in a managerial positions or be in administrative positions and all that. That Why am I yawning? I'm sorry about that. That we are built for the labor, right? So all these are the things that when you see them and you are like, mm-mm, we are not built for labor. We are built for everything, everything. And we can actually do anything. We can achieve anything we put our mind on. There is no limit to what we can do. We can only trigger you or probably get you upset or get you mad for the fact that we are doing great for ourselves. That it's not our problem, right? It is you that decided to start looking at us that or start undermining our efforts or our hard works and all that. And I remember a black woman told a story how each time they see a black woman or something, they always feel like you are built for that labor. For that reason, I mean, it is their right to fall back most times why a black person do the job. Or she actually said that she sold something. I mean, online. I think she sells something. Then she sold something to a white woman, bought it. So she told the story how it was really very hard for her to get that into the boat. Like it was really not a great experience. So somebody bought that and probably came to pick it up. And when the person came to pick it up, she lifted it out from her own car. So the woman was thinking that as she was going to carry that and go and put, I mean, like she actually went straight to her own car and opened the car doors so that the black woman would put that into her car. And you know how so to them, we are built for that labor. That is what we are meant for. We are not supposed to have good things of life. You are not supposed to have some certain things and all that. I remember being asked, uh, what am I worth? Can you imagine your colleagues asking you, what are you worth? You know, can you afford this? The fact that they feel so insecure that they want to ask some certain question that even a 5-year-old reasonable person will never ask. Can you imagine coming to, I probably ask you, how much did you get? Let's say iPhone 12, like you are using an iPhone. So how much did you get it? Why would you be asking that? This is an example, but this is typically the things they do because they cannot stand it seeing you doing great because they feel that you are not supposed to have that. So why am I this? I am supposed to be the one receiving and getting all this. Then why is it coming to you? Forgetting that we all have different grace and all that. I mean, so all I can understand is that majority of them are insecure about black wealth because they usually like you see them panicking or you see them acting crazily. That is actually truth. See you all in my next video. Bye for now.